Okay, you're out bow hunting. You've got a deer in close. You made the shot. You think you've done everything right. It looked good. It felt good. The deer kind of crashed off, but you didn't find it right away. You might have asked some of your seasoned buddies who are veteran hunters, and they might say, I think you got one lung. Now what? That's what we're going to talk about today. The one lung shot on whitetails is very tricky, and it's a hard one to unravel if you don't exercise patience and you don't know a few things about deer anatomy. Let's talk about this today. This is a great model to use to look at on all deer organs. I'm going to take the scapula off. We've talked about that enough over the years, but we're going to talk about the lungs today. When we look at the lungs, two lungs obviously in a deer, we're looking at about 15 inches long, about 9 inches wide. But what you need to understand here is they're not static. The lungs expand and contract, and they're of different sizes. They are connected to the membrane and the bottom of the diaphragm of the thoracic cavity, but they do change based on when the deer is breathing. And when you look on the inside of the deer here, you see the two lungs are situated in there. That's important to know in the fact that just because you think you got it through the thoracic cavity doesn't mean that you got double lungs, and it doesn't mean you got one lung. How does a one lung hit happen? Normally, through my experience for myself in tracking numerous deer for other people over the years, the deer was quartering when the deer was shot. And normally when I say quartering, it's usually quartering two. So if you look at this example, and that arrow is coming in from an angle, it could hit the back lobe of a lung. And if you look at it this way, it could be going in and out right there. It could be a high angle. It could be piercing just a part of the lung here. Most cases, you would think that it's almost impossible to slip an arrow through that thoracic cavity and only hit a lung without hitting the liver, without hitting other vital organs, or without hitting the guts. Normally, it's a combination of things. What you need to know about the liver, it's situated off to the side of the inside of the one cavity. So if you're coming from this side and you got one of those angles, quartering two angles, you could get in and out of there, maybe clip the intestines on the way out. That's how it happens. So how do I know I've made a one lung shot? It's not a guaranteed thing. It's not 100%. I can only guess based off of my experience, based off of how other deer have reacted, and when I've recovered them, I've looked at the wounds and I've seen what's happened. For me, normally what happens is a deer that's hit through one lung, or one lung and maybe something else, it reacts almost the same as a double lung shot. It basically mule kicks, crashes off, you think you heard it go down, but then invariably you get down, you start blood trailing it, you get in there 50 yards, 100 yards, 100, 200, 300, 400 yards, and you haven't found the deer. If I get in there and I'm trailing a deer that I suspect is lung shot, if I get to 100 yards and I haven't found that deer, I'm going to back out, and then I'm going to assess things. If you get in there and you're finding blood that's pink and frothy, bubbles in it, might not be great like that, but you might find a few bubbles and you suspect, well, I at least got one lung. You get in there 100 yards, you haven't found that deer. Now you need to assess, okay, how good is that blood trail? Is it just specks? That could indicate a one lung because you could have an arrow coming through, guts might be clogging the entry and the exit wounds, or the arrow might still be in it. That's one indicator. Another indicator is that deer runs off a certain distance and it never beds down. So basically you're finding good blood, good blood, good blood, and all of a sudden now you're looking at a drop, a speck, just a tiny speck, and you're really your blood trailing skills are being tested because you're not finding that deer. Very similar to a gut shot deer. A gut shot deer, a lot of times you find great blood right away, and boom, it either dries up completely or it's just a little drop here, drop there. How long should you wait? I recommend that if you suspect a one lung shot, one lung wound, I'm going to suggest anywhere from 4 to 6 hours minimum. Gut shot deer, I've normally said 6 hours. Now today, I always say, if at all possible, let that deer go overnight. If it's in the in the evening, if it's in the morning, you almost let it go a whole day. If you have good conditions, conditions would be cold weather and the absence of coyotes. If you don't have cold weather and you've got a lot of coyotes, sometimes you have to make a judgment call and go a little bit sooner. You're going to run a risk of jumping that deer. But a one lung deer, invariably, you're going to find the deer dead. Invariably, you're going to find the deer dead in its first bed, but it's going to take a little bit. So keep these things in mind. One lung is tricky. You just got to make a good judgment call as to when to get down, when to blood trail it, and when to stop and back out and give it some more time. Hey, do you want to make your range time more convenient and more fun? Check out the revealing targets like these new Big Burrs from Birchwood Casey. Very convenient. They have self-adhesive on here. I can stick them right down there on the gun range, and also highly visible. This black and orange contrast really helps me see where my bullet is hitting as far as in relation to the target and how far I have to move it. The biggest thing obviously is the reveal. When my bullet hits, it reveals in white. I can sit down there 100, 200 yards with my binoculars only, and I can see where my bullets are hitting rather than running back and forth, wasting time, and especially on a hot day like today, you don't want to be getting that worked up. Check them out from Birchwood Casey. That's the new Big Burrs targets. Check them out at your favorite shooting supply store or go to birchwoodcasey.com.